afternoon, Sam, and we're back.
Hello, Kate. Another exciting week on the podcast.
Yeah. And we wanted to kick off straight away with something you did on the weekend, which was watching the new Barbie movie.
Yes, I have to say at the outset, I wasn't going because I wanted to see the Barbie movie. I actually wanted to go and see Insidious, so I wanted to go and see a horror movie. But the kids wanted to go and see Barbie, so I'm like, yeah, let's go and see Barbie. Sure. Let me just say that my bar for this movie was sitting on the ground. I had no expectations that this was going to be any good at all. And I know that there are a lot of people talking about this on social media, and a lot of people are very anti-Barbie movie and do not want to see it. But Kate, I have to say I would go and see that movie again. I absolutely loved it. There were so many great messages in there about feminism. There was so, apart from the fact that it was very, very funny, but I felt like it was a really impactful movie, and I was absolutely shocked. The way that they've delivered this message using Barbie is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
So can you tell us a bit about, because I haven't seen it and I'm very keen to go see it now, because I too have seen the social media storm about the movie and how it broke all records of movie sales in the first week or something. And so obviously it's resonating with people. It's hitting humanity at the right time with the right message somehow, because it's resonating. So what is it? What is it that's so good about it?
Oh, look, I don't know about you, Kate, but I was never the kid that played with Barbies. I was playing in the creek and climbing trees, and I was tomboying around. I was never a Barbie person. So that's probably why I wasn't attracted to the whole premise of watching a movie about Barbie. And I've got 4 daughters, and I don't think any of them were huge, like, Barbie fans either. I mean, they had Barbie dolls, but it wasn't something that they obsessed over like you see some little kids really obsessed with Barbie. But I hope this isn't a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen the movie and you want to, sorry, Kate, because I know you haven't, but stop listening for now, because I'm gonna do a really, really rough outline of the plot of the movie. So basically, the movie goes that Barbie and all of the Barbies and all of the Ken dolls and everything all live in Barbie Land. And Barbie Land is run by a President Barbie. And, over the years, Barbie has had so many careers, and all of those different types of Barbies are all in Barbie Land. And the Kens that live in Barbie Land are really quite superfluous. They don't have a specific purpose like the Barbies do. So, you've got Astronaut Barbie and President Barbie and, Surgeon Barbie and all of those really illustrious career Barbies. Kens don't have that. So it was kind of interesting to think about the fact that that's the way this world has been painted, this world of Barbie dolls. Anyway, so there's a shift in the continuum between Barbie Land and the real world, and Barbie has to go to the real world to fix what's going wrong. So needless to say, Ken's all puppy dog-eyed about Barbie, and he decides that he's going to go with her. So he, stashes himself away in the back of the little Barbie car, and he goes to the real world with her. And there is massive realization for both of these characters, because Barbie was under the impression that her world of being represented and respected was reflected in the real world. And when she got there, she found out that it wasn't like that at all. And all of the progress she felt she'd made for women in the real world hadn't happened. So she was devastated to see what the real world was like, whereas the experience for Ken was stepping into this world where, hang on, the women aren't running the show, the men are. And all of a sudden he was like, hang on, this is pretty cool. Like, men have a purpose and men are doing all the cool things. So Ken sneaks back to Barbie Land and he tells all the other Kens, hey, the real world, the men have got it going on. So back in Barbie Land, they start to take over. And it's done very stereotypically and it's very, very funny. So all the Barbie dream houses get decked out like man caves with big flat screen TVs and pool tables and bar fridges and all of those things that you would just stereotypically associate with a man cave.
Uh-huh.
So Ken decides that all the Kens are going to run Barbie Land because that's what it's like in the real world. That's what it should be like for them. When Barbie returns to Barbie Land and sees what's going on, all of the other Barbies have been kind of brainwashed. It's kind of Stepford Wives situation there. So she's got to figure out how she's going to get the Barbies to remember who they are and what they're capable of.
Oh, wow.
And then they've got to remind the Kens that they're not there to serve them their drinks and do all of those menial things because they've achieved so much already. So there's a whole plot and it's very, very funny, and I won't spoil that part for people, but it's really brilliantly, it's so funny and so intelligent at the same time. So needless to say, the movie ends up with the balance of power shifting back to the Barbies, but also with the tragic realisation of Ken that he has spent his entire existence in the shadow of somebody else and not ever knowing who he is and what he wants and what he's good at. And so I feel like the movie, it just like in the real world, the movie flipped the script on the role that men and women have. And I think that's what I really love about it. And I also think that as much as we try and push ourselves forward and empower women, it does impact men because they get lost in that. And I think this is where we've got to find the balance and the equity in how we allow women to flourish without diminishing men. Anyway, that was my take on the Barbie movie.
Brilliant. It sounds really clever because they're by flipping the script and making Ken be the one who's forgotten who he is and feels like he's not living his purpose or as his full potential, it's helping men empathize with that state. Right.
Yeah.
Which normally that's just a woman's problem, you know. But in this case, because it's Ken and he's realizing that he's lived this life where he's been in someone else's shadow, then all the men can relate to the Ken character because he's male. So it's very cleverly drawing men into the world of Kens. But I'm fascinated how the Kens were in Barbie Land before they went into the real world. When you said they didn't really, were they just Barbies? Barbies were the ones with the careers, and what was Ken doing? What was his role?
They didn't really show an awful lot about what Ken was doing. You know, the Kens were, it was all, you know, like, hi, Barbie, and Ken, like Ryan Gosling's Ken, spent his time kind of following Barbie around. Like he was in love with Barbie and he was trying to, you know, get closer to her. So the movie at the start shows him, puppy dogging after Barbie. So it doesn't show him doing anything of any substance, really.
But what he realizes when he goes to the real world, he sees that men, what's the difference that he sees then? That men are having careers, or what is it that wakes him up?
That men have power and men have choice and men have careers and men are respected. It's very funny. In one scene in the real world, Ken has an interaction with a woman and all she does is go up and say, oh, excuse me, sir, have you got the time? And that is the story. When he goes back to Barbie Land, there's a scene where he's just returned and he's sitting there with all the other Kens and he's telling this story about, this is how much you're respected. Somebody asked me for the time. And the fact that that is such an inconsequential thing to be talking about, but it meant so much to him, that it showed the depth of how insignificant he thought he was.
So it's almost like invisibility. So the Kens were invisible.
Yeah.
Didn't have any power. They were there, but they were invisible, just sort of inconsequential. Whereas interesting. So someone paying attention to him and asking the time felt like a big thing. So interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah. Like I say, it was just so beautifully and cleverly done, and I really enjoyed it.
There was obviously a lot of thought put into the script, but also, it is brilliant because Barbie has traditionally been bashed for being misogynistic because it's all about the skinny figure and the perfect, tiny waist and big boobs and perfect figure. And so they've had to fight against being that stereotypical brand that's taking advantage of women, whereas it's a very clever brand move because now it's actually empowering. It's all about girl power and how in Barbie Land, men are actually, it's super clever the way they've done that. Totally, like you say, flip the script on the stereotypical understanding we have of what Barbie is about.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, even Barbie has to reflect on her own character when she's out in the real world and questions what she's all about and who she is. So even though she has been in this position for her existence in Barbie Land, she's now questioning that, and she's questioning, well, if I don't look like this, who am I? And that's another question that women are always faced with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
so I feel like they've addressed so many things in this one movie, and I feel like I have to go and see it again because I've probably missed so many other things.
And what do you think was her insight around realizing that she'd had this power and sort of taking it for granted maybe? What was she starting to see? Did you get a sense of that around, it's not just your outward appearance, or what is it? What was the realization you think she had?
Oh, for Margot Robbie's Barbie, because she was the stock standard Barbie, she was actually feeling, even though she wasn't the president in Barbie Land, but she was certainly one of the lead. She was the lead Barbie. So, people listened to her, people respected her, everybody wanted to be friends with that Barbie, And I think that in the real world, she had the realization that she was ordinary. She didn't, she wasn't the astronaut Barbie or, like the obstetrician Barbie or any of those other Barbies. She didn't have that great career. She was the first stock standard, and all she was known for really was being pretty and wearing nice clothes. So she questioned what she was all really about as well.
So she'd sort of made it where she was in the world to that position of status and power through her looks.
Yeah, and she was questioning who am I really? Because I'm ordinary. So what have I got to give the world? And that's what she wanted to explore.
Mm-hmm. Wow, fascinating. Yes, sounds like there's lots to unpack in there. I'm going to have to see it.
Yeah. And can I can I undo all of that by saying that whoever did Ryan Gosling's contouring did a fantastic job?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do you mean by contouring?
Oh, his abs.
Oh, hilarious. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. And the only reason I mentioned that, apart from it's Ryan Gosling, but that is the physique of Ken. On the Ken dolls, he had the abs and everything as well. So, yeah, it
So
was really well done. Yeah.
yeah, and this sounds
Yeah.
like it's a beautiful movie in the way it challenges traditional stereotypes, but also the pros and cons of female empowerment as well. So the more powerful or
Yes.
empowered women become, the impacts of that on the men, and to be mindful of that too. So it sounds like it's got all angles covered.
Yes, yes. But I love the way the focus was female empowerment, but it was balanced with the being conscious of not disempowering men in the pursuit of female empowerment.
Yes, yeah, which is a great message. Yeah, and necessary.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, there you
Yes.
go. And something else you've been watching recently on around, you was talking about these documentaries about mindset, about deep sea diving or something, and the training of the mind.
Free diving.
Free dive.
I watched a documentary on I stopped because you know what it's like where you watch one thing and then the streaming service then gives you 10 other shows to watch on the same thing. So I watched a
Artificial
documentary on
intelligence at work.
free diving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by free diving. So in my younger days, I did quite a bit of scuba diving. And, that's one thing to go deep underwater in the ocean with oxygen, but free diving is so extreme. It's one of the most extreme sports. And oh my goodness, the common theme that came through from these athletes from me was that the progression in their sport, yes, there's the physical side about learning to hold your breath and that sort of thing, but it boiled down to the mindset and controlling your fear. And I think this is such a relevant message for people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know from scuba diving, and look, everybody knows the deeper you go in the ocean, the darker it gets because the light is then blocked out. But these women, I was watching women free dive. Now, these women were diving to depths of 100 meters.
Oh my goodness.
They are completely alone down there. So they have safety divers that are in the top 40 meters. But once you go deeper than that, you're alone. It's pitch black. You can't see. And this is where if you can't conquer your fear and you panic, like it could mean death.
Yeah.
It literally could mean death. And I think that being able to control your mindset or conquer fear and all the work that we do around mindset is so relevant to everything we do. No matter what your fear, you need to learn to, look at it and control it and flip it and do all of those things so that you can push forward.
Yeah, I mean, my mind boggles as to why someone would want to do that. But I guess go down 100 meters into the ocean with, I mean, this is taking me back to high school physics, but that's like 1,000 bar pressure or something. It's just insane.
Exactly.
What you're doing to the human body, let alone the mind. And yeah, it's just insane. It's crazy to me why someone would want to do that. But I also understand, because it's the ultimate challenge of conquering fear, isn't it? Like if you can conquer that, you can conquer anything in life. But it is interesting, the parallels to business, because I know fear is something that I have struggled with over the years a lot. And we have touched on it in previous episodes, but there's something very primordial, or what's the word, that triggers your base instincts. They always talk about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and you've got your safety down the bottom, and then everything's, then you've got belonging, community, relationships, and then actualization up the top. But the baseline is covering your safety needs. And whenever those are threatened, it's really scary. And even though it could be irrational, because, in our society, it's not like, you're there's government support systems and so on. So the worst thing that could happen is often not as bad as we think it is. But the thought of going bankrupt in business, or not being able to stay solvent, or not being able to keep your doors open, or, there's something very, very, very scary. I don't know how else to say it, but I've been there when you and I have been there during tough times, during COVID, when we literally didn't have a pipeline or any means to create ongoing revenue. And it was scary as heck, because you think, that's it, I'm going to go bankrupt. This is the end. Getting through that. And every time, the only way I've managed to get through that real fear of, that's it, I'm out. I now have to officially admit that I've failed in business and I've got to go back and get a job. That's sort of the thought process is going on. The only thing that's got me through in those times is it's actually just letting go and surrendering and trusting that it's going to be okay, because life has always got my back. And when I get to that point of letting go and surrendering, as opposed to trying to fight it and hold on and control and force things to happen, whenever I let go, that's when things open up and magic happens. And somehow I'm back on my feet and I'm moving forward again. So,
I don't you find it interesting, Kate, that, in business, generally speaking, we don't face physical danger. So, we're not going to get mauled by a bear or a lion, things like that. So there isn't the fight for life in the physical aspect. But so many of the fears that we have in business are around what people might think and, what might happen, because I know someone's brother, sister's cousin's friend from another country that this happened to, so that could happen to me. It's amazing how we adopt the stories of other people to fuel the fear rather than looking for inspiration to conquer it.
Yeah, we go very quickly into worst case scenario or looking for other examples of where it's been a complete failure. Yeah, and I think there's running a business, that fear that we were talking about is totally unfamiliar, or not even a known feeling to employees. So people who have worked as an employee their whole life have no idea what this fear, totally debilitating fear is, because even if you stuff up at work, say you make a monumental failure, you might lose your bonus, but your salary still comes through. So, you're guaranteed, when you sign on as an employee, you sign a contract, you are guaranteed to get that salary every week or 2 weeks or month, whatever it is. And you can relax knowing that that's coming in no matter how badly you perform, and until you go into performance management and they get you out of the company, So it's totally different. And I know my husband doesn't understand that constant sort of fear of cash flow. It's all about cash flow management, isn't it? You have to always be on the ball and knowing your cash flow, because it's like this delicate balance. And if you get it wrong, or if you don't factor in tax and you have a $9,000 tax bill all of a sudden, or if there are so many things that can put you out of business or put you on the back foot financially, and you don't have that as an employee at all. You've got this safety net that keeps you fed and clothed and happy. So it's a really hard concept to explain to someone who's never been a business owner. And I know that's exactly why a lot of employees say to me, I'll never be a business owner. I just don't need that stress, of being responsible for your own revenue generation.
Yeah. But on the other hand, they will never experience all of the good things about entrepreneurship, like the unlimited capacity for making money, for the capacity to be free. It's difficult, and I'm at the point now with some clients where I'm trying to talk to them about transitioning from working in their business to stepping out and separating themselves a little bit and letting other people run the business, because financially you don't need to work in the business to be okay. You will still make money. And because we are so highly trained to be employees. It is a very challenging concept for most people to understand and to take on, that they can make the money and not work in the business.
Yes. Yeah.
And the contradiction is that so many times we go into business looking for that freedom, looking for the financial freedom and not having to work as hard and all of that sort of thing. Yet we can't step away and make the money.
Yeah.
And feel okay about it.
Yeah, yeah, and getting people to let go of control. It's understanding that when you do that, as you and I have experienced by taking on a good virtual assistant, when you totally let go of that whole chunk of work and let them run with it, and they do it, and it it works. It allows you to focus on other things which are higher value, more valuable use of your time. And now I'm looking at doing that again and again, and for different aspects of my business, because I think it takes a while to get it, doesn't it? That feeling of, if I let go of this and let someone take charge of it, then that frees me to do this. And the more you do that, the freer you are. But at the same time, there's the flip side, because people then feel shackled to the business because now they have the responsibility for all these employees or contractors or virtual assistants. So do you find with your ladies it's all about going through the process of letting go and trusting that if you pay someone else to do this, that frees you are actually going to do better?
Yes, it is a very, there are so many things tied to this, and it is all mindset. It's the association with, well, who am I? If somebody else can do what I do, who am I? That's number one. And then, like I said, it's the mindset of feeling undeserving to still be reaping financial reward when you haven't, when you're not working day to day. And that's totally dismissing all of the effort you've put in over the years to get it to the point where you can hand it to somebody, an employee, a manager or something like that, to run everything on a day-to-day basis while you sit back and reap the rewards of all the work you've already put in. So,
I remember this book that I read by Roger Hamilton called Wink, A Modern Day Parable of Wealth Beyond Words. Have you ever come across that one?
No.
Oh, it's brilliant. You'll love it. It's a parable, but it's talking about a business owner that goes out and has all these realizations about exactly what we're talking about. And he comes to the conclusion that a 5-star life is easier than a 2-star life.
Kate, I love that message, because the book that I'm listening to on Audible right now is 10x is easier than 2x.
Yes, and that
sounds like a very similar train of thought and a very similar message.
Yeah. But to get there, like making that leap, I mean, I've experienced how hard that can be mentally, you too, and to some extent we're still on that path. So, but I've experienced it enough to know that's what I have to do, to trust that that's what I have to do. Whereas a lot of the clients you and I are dealing with, they're yet to experience the relief it gives you when you take that first step to outsource or pay someone else to do work. And then it becomes about doing more and more of that, to the point where you have oversight and you're the face of the business, if that's what, if that's the path you're going down, and you're doing the business development, bringing in the revenue, but then it ticks over pretty much by itself, and you only step in for the high value generating stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where we all have to elevate ourselves to. We get so bogged down in the mundane tasks of the basic operations. We get really bogged down in that. And I think for too many people, that's like cement boots, and that's where they get stuck.
For years or decades, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, the thing that I'm getting out of this book, 10x is easier than 2x, it is all about the mindset and the way you think about things. And I'm very, very focused at the moment on shifting my mindset to, if my business was 10x, how would I be operating? What work would I be doing on a day-to-day basis? Because all the time I'm doing the 2x work, that's where my business is going to be. And I've
Yes.
heard this message so many times from people that I respect, that your business is only ever going to be as good as the mindset of the business owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your business is a reflection of your mindset, your inner world. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's you have to adopt the mindset, and then the mindset has to manifest into the actions. So it all starts here. It all starts in the mind.
Mm. So what would you say is the biggest shift you've had to make?
I think that it has been for me about just detaching myself from all of those little tasks and really sitting down and going, what am I doing right now? Because just because this is what everybody does, and just because some guru said this is what I have to do in business, but I've really sat down and said, does this actually add value? Is this actually helping my business in any way, shape, or form? Or am I just doing these things because that's what everybody does? And I'm trying to really detach myself from what everybody else is doing and just look at my own business and figure out exactly what it is that I need to do as far as revenue generation goes, as far as serving my clients as best as I can, focusing on those things, because if my business was 10 times bigger, that's what I would have to do. So those are the things that I've got to get really good at in order to 10x my business.
And surrounding yourself with the right people too to elevate your thinking has been a big thing for me because, I've joined a mastermind group where they're all, and it triggered massive imposter syndrome for me because they're all $1 million business owners. And I'm not at $1 million turnover yet, but there's little old me hanging out with these people. And I got into that group via an introduction and from through running a workshop for them on artificial intelligence in business and how to use it. So it was just because it was actually my content marketing that I was putting out there that someone picked up on, and they said, hey, we'd love you to come and talk to our group on this. And then they invited me to join them. And and suddenly the shift in my level of thinking, when I was playing down here, aiming for the multi six figures, and suddenly you're aiming for the 10x, the $1 million, it's a totally different playing field. And just the way you think is different. And therefore, the opportunities that come your way are different. So it's so important to surround yourself with the right people. And if you feel like the people you're out networking with are not elevating you enough, then maybe you need to be looking at different circles. Yeah. And a couple of the other quotes that I had that I just looked them up from Wink because I wrote them down. One of them was choose the level you want to play at, which is what we're just talking about. And what you see is always what you get. Another one is invest more of your time. So, invest more of your time and spend less of it.
I like that one.
Mm. And invest more of your money, spend less of it.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I wrote a post on social media today, and it was about comparing, and I started the post with the premise of what do I do as a coach? And I was a coach for many years in the sporting world, not a famous coach or anything, just normal kids coach. But the translation between coaching sport and coaching business, I just find that there are so many similarities, and yet the two roles are viewed so very, very differently. Mm-hmm. And if you translate what you've just spoken about into the sporting world, and I worked my way up playing as a player in netball, and I had my Saturday team. But then, when I was in my early teens, I was selected for a regional team. Now, my game naturally improved because I was playing at a high level. The competition was higher, the coaching was better, and the other players on the team were better. It was only natural that I improved. And, as I went through the different levels and ended up, traveling around the countryside playing netball, obviously my game elevated. And that was coach and the standard of the players that I was surrounded by.
Yeah.
This is so true in business as well. And it's exactly what you were saying about, you level up by joining that mastermind and being surrounded by high level players. It's only natural that you're going to absorb some of that and improve yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is why it's so important, especially starting out, finding a group, isn't it, too, of people that you resonate with and who challenge you to think beyond where you're at. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because you need the forward perspective, and we're all looking for people to be inspired by, and that's where you've got to look at people that are not better than you, but are doing the things that you aspire to do and are doing things in ways that you aspire to do them, because you want to try and sort of follow in their path a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. They need to sort of model for you what's possible. They need to be doing, exactly what you aspire to do. And I know so I run my online business, Inspired Business Collective mastermind group. And it's beautiful. It's all women sort of in the 0 to 5 years operational. There's a few that have been there a bit longer. And so it's really focused on hitting those multi-six figures consistently. And, and I've had a couple of ladies evolve beyond the level of that group because it's not playing at a high enough level for them, because they've grown faster, and they find that some of the other ladies that are earlier on in the journey, those conversations aren't elevating them anymore. It's elevating all the ones that are, in the 0 to 5 bracket, and they're getting massive value from it. But the ones, they say to me, oh, I'm just getting more and more busy. And I say, it's okay to say that you've outgrown the group, and that's a really good thing. It's a good thing to admit, to celebrate that you've actually grown and you're beyond. You need to find a new circle of people that are going to elevate you, not just stay playing at your level. So, we've all got to find those places to hang out where we feel that stretch.
Yes. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
That's exactly right. And it feels good to be in a room where you're, obviously it triggers all your insecurities if you're the dumbest in the room. And I don't want to say dumbest, I mean least further, what was the word, not as far along the journey as some others. But it's really exciting at the same time, isn't it, to be having those conversations with people that are thinking on a whole different plane.
It is. And Kate, doesn't it give you such a great sense of self-belief when you are surrounded by those people? And because straight away it's like, well, these women have done it already and they're accepting me, so I must have some value to be here.
Oh, yeah.
And it really does fill you up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you belong there, if no one's, if they're comfortable to have you there, and you should absolutely give yourself a pat on the back. And so what have been some of the places you've found that have elevated you, Sam?
Oh my goodness me. That's a very good question. I think I have certainly found myself at events, in-person events, for various things, where I have definitely been intimidated by the people that I've found myself surrounded by. But I always try and think about how to try and sound intelligent and worthy of being part of a conversation. So it feels good when you can contribute in those circles, I think. And I believe this is why that, part of my DNA is to be constantly learning, because you never know who you're going to end up in front of. And I always feel like if you can hold a conversation and if you can, sort of have a broad knowledge of a few different things, then, at least you can be a part of the conversation that's going on around you. But, yeah, I get intimidated by, some people's education and, some people's success for sure. Absolutely.
That's such a good point. And that's why, I mean, I had a joke to the person that asked me to come in and run this AI workshop. I said to him, I said, in full disclosure, it really does feel like the blind leading the blind. Because, I'm no expert in AI, but I think the fact that I put out there what I was learning and what I had learned, and I'm willing to to educate myself on the latest developments, that's already so much more than most people. And the fact that you can hold those conversations and with exactly what you said, you can then contribute rather than and even the Barbie thing, if that was to come up in professional circles, it's a valuable contribution because it's challenging, the glass ceiling and gender stereotypes. So I think just the whole thing about staying informed and relevant and keeping yourself fresh and alive by learning. It's that lifelong journey of learning, isn't it? And always feeding yourself. That's another good point, isn't it? Feeding your brain with information that is constantly challenging your thinking or growing your knowledge in some way.
Yeah. I think the other really important thing that I certainly include, when I'm in a conversation with people and I have no idea what they're talking about, is that I never try and pretend that I know what they're talking about, but I do always stay curious and ask questions. And I always find people are so generous with their knowledge, and I'm not so full of myself that I don't, I will stick my hand up and say, this is amazing. I don't know anything about this, but I'm like, can you please tell me more about this? Can you please explain? Ask questions. You don't necessarily have to contribute to the conversation with the information, but curiosity is also a contribution.
Absolutely. It's a really good point. And it's very important to to be able to contribute to the conversation, like you said, but at the same time admit when you don't know something and be okay with that, and never try to pretend, because that's just not a good look. If you get caught out pretending you know something and then it turns out you don't, that's not a situation you want to be in, because that just shows that you've been inauthentic to try and cover up your insecurities. And people can see through that stuff now. I mean, I can always see when someone else is doing it. But exactly like you said, staying curious and asking questions, and people are generous with their knowledge, and people love talking about themselves or educating other people about stuff that they know. So it's a great flattery technique as well. I felt not that that's your intention, but like you said, people are generous with their knowledge because we love to talk about ourselves or what we know. So asking questions, it's a win-win, because we get to learn more about stuff we didn't know about. So we're therefore growing and learning. And it's inviting them into the conversation, giving them the opportunity to share what they know and building the relationship. So that's a beautiful reminder.
Yeah. There is a very distinct advantage to being curious about other people, particularly if you're in a networking environment, because when you are curious about other people, even if you're not in any way, shape or form an expert in what they do, but by learning a little bit about them and what they do, and then when you're talking to other people, it's not conceited, but it does feel really good to say, hey, I don't know much about that, but I do know that person over there who is an expert. Would you like me to introduce you? Being able to do that, and once again, you don't have to actually know anything, but knowing about other people and what they do is certainly an advantage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's how you can add greater value to everyone you're dealing with, because you can connect people with each other and put them in the right place or in touch with the right person. It's a hugely valuable. And that's probably the main reason I go networking, is just to know who's who in town so that I can better serve my clients when they have a need for a particular service. I can say, well, go and try that person there. Yeah. Being curious and having that mindset that we often talk about, the giver's mindset, that if I give first, I'm more likely to receive, or just giving with no agenda always karmically returns business and positive stuff to your business. So taking the time to learn about someone's business and then referring someone to them, I mean, what greater gift is there for that person than that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we don't have to be everything to all people.
Yeah. But I do think that mindset, it seems to have been an episode about mindset today, which is good.
Yes.
But firstly, being mindful of gender stereotypes and how we're impacting the men or the women in our lives with Barbie, and then the whole thing about deep sea diving and conquering fear, and then getting into learning and curiosity, and the 10x versus the 2x mindset. But that curiosity is, I think, the key to people that succeed, as I see it when I'm out networking, as I know we both do a lot. Those that are genuinely curious about other people are the ones I like more, and they've also, and I send more business their way because they listen and they genuinely care. There are not many people out there that know how to listen well.
No, it's something we all take for granted, listening, because we confuse listening with just sitting there and hearing sound. And I remember when I was at uni and I was studying communication, and we had to, part of that was obviously learning how to listen. And I was like, wow, you're not conscious of how much goes into being a good listener.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a skill that you have to practice and be mindful of, isn't it? And everyone's natural default position is to, as someone else is talking, be thinking about the next thing they're going to say, right? Or what they want to say about themselves. Whereas those who listen, you're just sitting there and you're really listening and you're absorbing, and it usually results in other questions, because then you're like, oh, that's interesting. So what about this? And I know that people have told me that they appreciate, that I actually listen. And you and I as coaches, that's our role. We have to, that's what we do. We listen. Yeah. But it's just interesting, the people that I gravitate to in networking and who I refer business to, they're the ones that genuinely listen. They're mindful. They're emotionally intelligent. They're curious. They're givers. They're the ones that I see thriving and doing really well, because it's not just about them. They're actually genuinely interested in helping other businesses and therefore helping themselves. It's a win-win. I mean, if you help other businesses, naturally it helps your business grow. But too many people seem to get stuck in just being focused on themselves.
They do. And I think this is why we're so attracted to helping business owners that are all about creating impact, because there seems to always be some phenomenal story behind their purpose and behind the impact that they want to create. And those people are just inspirational, I think. So many people you pass on the street, and, I've discovered at networking that asking people a few very simple questions about their story and who they are as a person, and it blows my mind that, the average person that you wouldn't sort of think anything of has had such a tremendous life, or had such phenomenal, heartbreaking or exciting experiences. You just don't know.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And assuming that every person you see has a story and that you want to find it. I think that's a great mindset to have as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too that we all need to remember that everybody else's stories help us enrich our own lives.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Yep. Storytelling's where it's at. And it was interesting when we were in Bali and we did on the business retreat I hosted last month, and when we had Athena Daniels come in as the 6 times best author, and she got everyone to figure out their defining story from a business sense and tell it. And the breakthroughs that those women had were incredible. I think we've talked about it, but it added a whole other dimension to their why. It sort of elevates the why and makes it resonate even more strongly and more loudly. That storytelling is just so important. It's what we've always known, isn't it? All the Indigenous cultures, that's what they pass down, is the stories and the learning through the stories.
Yes, it's very sad that isn't part of our current culture, because it is so important. And the fact that we recognise it's so important and we're still not doing anything about it, that's really frustrating.
Absolutely. It's only when you've got a funeral of your grandfather you find out all these stories, or someone in the family that passes away and all the stories come out, and you think, how do we not know this? This is powerful, and it is crazy, isn't it? That we just put people in a nursing home and don't attempt to draw the stories out. I know there's people doing that now, which is great, but it's not part of our culture to the point where it's just what we do.
No, it's a bit sad. And I know that when I get together with my brothers and we talk about, we all share the stories that our parents told us. And it's interesting that we don't even all have the same stories. There are some stories that I've heard that my brothers haven't. And so there's a real connection for us in sharing those stories. And there is also a regret that we didn't actually document these stories while our parents were still alive and get them, recorded them or video or anything like that, because we love sharing those stories amongst ourselves. And, even for my two youngest children, because, I was in the Navy and I discharged after I had my third daughter. But I remember the day that my son came home from school and he just had the realisation that I'd been in the Navy and had just found out what that was. And he's like, wow, Mum, were you in the Navy?
Yeah.
And it wasn't something I was conscious of, but I thought, I'm not actually telling my children my own stories.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I know my kids I was telling them about that because they had a science incursion and that there were these scientists and that they were talking about engineering. And I said, well, I spent 8 years in the laboratory and I was researching and I was a research scientist, and then I, went into the world to become, and then you realise that your kids, we don't share our history with them, and then they're like, oh, you're a scientist? Yeah, it's so interesting. We should do more of that.
Because the kids are just mum.
Yeah, fascinating. Look, we're going to have to wrap up because it's almost coming up to the hour, but it's been such a great conversation, and I love this. Whatever we often plan to talk about doesn't eventuate, but we get onto something even better, I find.
Yes, yeah. Well, go and see the Barbie movie.
I absolutely will be going to see the Barbie movie. Can't wait. And yeah, we can have another.
Take your boys?
I think it would be good for them to see. Absolutely.
Yeah. I was actually shocked, because all of the sessions, and there were a lot of sessions of this movie, and nearly all of those sessions, there was only the random odd seat left in the cinema, and there were 5 of us going. So number one challenge was actually getting 5 seats together. But I did notice in the cinema that there were an extraordinary amount of men there to see the movie.
Great.
I'm curious about their motivation for seeing it. I kind of wish I knew their motivation going in and then what they took away from it, because
I'd love to know.
They weren't men that were there with children. So
we should invite a man on who's seen the movie to have a chat with them. That would be interesting.
That would be cool. Yeah. I don't know any personally, but
no, but I'll find one.
Yeah, because it would be good to get their perspective, because I think in our endeavour to be fair, we always need to have the other perspective, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's I'm totally, being a mother of 2 boys, I'm very conscious of the reverse, or the negative impacts of female empowerment or what it's doing to, it's got to be we've got to find the win-win for everyone.
Yeah. We want all ships to rise with the tide, don't we?
Exactly. And be more powerful together. I'm just happier, more fulfilled. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Sam. It's been so lovely talking to you as always, and we shall see